I am very happy that MSNBC is covering the Texas voter suppression march, the Texas voter suppression rally, because it's very important. But in covering it, I think we have to make sure and be fairly accurate in the way we ask questions and the way we promote things. But anyhow, uh, I give kudos to Stephanie Ruhle for giving both Beto O'Rourke and Reverend Barber the ability to the time that they needed to actually tell their message. But one of her questions irked me. Let's listen to the report and then we'll take it on the other side.
Let's head to Austin, Texas, where the march against voter suppression just resumed about an hour ago. Texans have been braving the heat all week ahead of tomorrow's rally at the state capitol. I want to bring in two people who've been leading that march. Former Texas Congressman Beto O'Rourke and Poor People's Campaign co-chair Bishop William Barber. Gentlemen, welcome. Congressman, we know voting rights is a massively important cause. But are you concerned about the optics? Lawmakers fleeing Texas now for weeks and weeks when there's a whole lot of other things that Texas voters need and want tended to day in and day out.
These Democratic legislators from Texas are absolute heroes because not only are they trying to stop voter suppression here in Texas, not only are they trying to advance voting rights in the one place where it can be won, United States Senate with the leadership of President Biden, but they understand the connections to the fact that Texas has a minimum wage of $7.25 an hour. It's the least insured state in the country, which means that folks are dying of diabetes and the flu and curable cancers because they just cannot see a doctor. So if we want to fix these things, people have to be able to vote. We're going to do our part here in Texas. We will be rallying in front of the state capitol at 10 a.m. on Saturday. We want everyone to be there to stand up and be counted.
Bishop, these Democrats have been in D.C. since July 12th. It's about to be August. How long is this going to last?
Well, I think it's bigger than that. We've been there since July 12th as well, engaged in massive moral direct action. The democracy is in trouble. If you say that we are seeing the worst attack since the Civil War, then the answer to that must be massive. And that's why we need to end the filibuster. Don't tell us it can't be done. We have to pass every provision of the For the People's Act. We're not compromising. We're still pushing for it all. We got to have a restored Voting Rights Act, and we have to have 15 in the union and protect our immigrants. Why? Because the same people that are suppressing the vote, suppress living wages, suppress health care, suppress immigrant justice, right? This is not a binary black versus white issue. This is an American issue, and all Americans ought to be standing up and understanding that 56 million Americans used processes to vote last time other than, say, on election day. What these legislators are doing is trying to retrogress and take all of those opportunities away. If you destroy the infrastructure of the democracy, the bridge that gets us to all the other policies, it won't matter if you do infrastructure and build physical bridges because you will have crumbled the bridges of our democracy. We have to have an answer from Congress, federal action that meets the challenge of this moment.
You know what else doesn't matter? How I feel about it, how people around the country feel about it. It matters how Texans feel about this. Last month, the Texas Tribune and University of Texas found that 35% of registered Texas voters wanted to make voting rules more strict, and only 26% wanted them loosened. Congressman, can an argument be made that these restrictive voting bills, while I may think they're reprehensible, they actually represent what Texas voters want?
I don't know about that because as I travel the state and listen to people, especially those most impacted, they want to make sure that it is easier for eligible voters to cast a ballot. 7 million Texans who were eligible in 2020 did not vote, and that's not for any lack of love of democracy.
And Stephanie, one of the things we got to think about is the Constitution, the 15th Amendment, says that no state or entity can deny or abridge the right to vote. Congress swore to uphold the Constitution. We have an attack on this democracy, and we ought to be asking this question. Why don't you want people to vote? Why is the U.S. Chamber of Commerce trying to undermine the For the People's Act? Why is their money involved and more than the United States Constitution? That's why we say to people in D.C., stand strong now. There are 4 things you got to deal with: access to the poll, gerrymandering, ethics, and money, so that we're not treating corporations like people and people like things. It's time for us to treat people like people and corporations like things and make sure we open up the ballot to everybody.
Absolutely so. Now, it's again, thank you, Stephanie, for really giving them a chance to articulate the message. Both of them were excellent in making sure that folks realize that, yes, we have to fight for the votes. Beto did a very smart thing. Yes, this is about voter suppression and the march is about voter suppression. But there's a narrative out there that's saying, hey, why don't you guys come back? There's other work that needs to be done in Texas. He wanted to remind Texans that in as much as these Republicans would like them to come back to handle this voter suppression bill, there are bills that need to be passed in Texas that's not even on the agenda. Hey, what about health insurance for Texans that are dying because we decided not to take the Medicaid expansion to the Affordable Care Act? How about in Texas where people are having problems with water? How about the infrastructure with regards to the power grid? How about all these other issues that really need to be taken care of that are not on the agenda for them to return to? So importantly, what Barber said was that if you can have bridges, but if you don't have, you can have infrastructure build bridges, but if you don't have the bridge for the people to elect those who will do right by them, then it makes no difference what we have. We no longer have a democracy. But what's important is even Texans feel that way. The poll was misrepresented. The poll said, wait, the majority of Texans want restricted voting. No. 35% of Texans, and you can imagine who those Texans are, want restrictive voting to ensure they continue to win and govern the state. The majority of people, 26% wanted looser rules, and I think about 30% wanted them to stay the same. So a majority of Texans do not agree with what their state representatives, the Republican state representatives, are doing in Texas right now. That is what the polls said. Unlike what Stephanie may have implied, that said the majority of Texans want these restrictive voting rules. They do not. And I don't want it around the country, for anybody around the country or for Texans to believe that their own Texans want restrictive voting. That is not the case. We want either more lenient voting or at worst for them to stay the way they are. Personally, we want very open voting so that we can get a true democracy. Anyone who wants to vote should be able to vote. And that is a constitutional guarantee that the federal Congress has the right, the constitutional right to support. We spend a lot of time deconstructing the news, trying to parse it into a form that everybody can understand. We try to find those little nitpicks where it flies above the fray, etc. If you really like these videos that we do, I want to ask a big favor. Please go ahead, number one, subscribe to our channel, and number two, please join if you can. Thank you so kindly for watching. Keep watching. Please remember to share. We must populate the entire internet with our progressive message, a message that we know is what most Americans say that they want. So help us, please join.